So now, it's the 15th of December recording this, you've lost £115 working with me. So like I said, it was your idea, 100th episode, get a client on that's lost over £100, and I think it's absolutely awesome. So like I said, we've been chatting loads off air, and again, meeting Mikey. So how are you feeling being on the podcast?
Welcome to the Prime Life Project podcast, a place to help you unlock your full potential, both mentally and physically, to become the best version of you.
Welcome back to an episode of the Prime Life Project podcast. I'm your host, Daniel James, and today is the 100th episode of the podcast. So if you are your Mikey cheering in the background here, I'll get you to put crowd noises in the background, like the crowd goes wild. So today I've got a really, really special guest I'm really looking forward to sharing with you. It's going to be absolutely awesome, genuinely. It's an absolute privilege to have her here talking and sharing her story. So before I get to that, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see they've got loads of cool, like 100 things for this episode. I've even got a cake, a podcast, little podcast cake, which is absolutely awesome. And again, the person that's with me today is actually responsible for all this. So with me going awkward and weird as fuck for these first 45 seconds of the podcast, you can thank her for this. But I just want to say a massive thank you to absolutely everybody that has helped me get this episode out. Like episode 100. When I first started this podcast, it's actually bizarre to me to think how far it's actually come in these 100 episodes. I've obviously got now Mikey on board. I've got a meeting after this podcast about, again, potential stuff that's going on behind the scenes to grow it even more. But again, it's down to you guys. So the reason why I'm able to do this and the reason why I'm able to get such good guests on and get some amazing content out there is because of you guys. Like you guys listening, you guys sharing the show. It does mean a lot to me. So like I said, with any of the episodes you listen to in the future, again, if you just happen to be in a conversation with someone, you think, oh, I've listened to a podcast episode that might help them, just keep doing what you guys are doing. Just share the love to help us spread the word, to help as many people as possible. Like the only reason why I do this is to help people. When I originally started this out, I spoke to you about this, Mikey. Like I want to help one person. Like the goal when I first started this on episode number 1, again, it's all still there. You can get back and listen to it. I was awkward. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I was just one guy on a mission to try and help people, to try and get people that've got inspiring stories, that are on the same mission as me, to just help people, because this information is out there, and I know this information is out there because I'm obsessed with learning about it. And the thing that bothers me is that this information is out there, but people can't get hold of it. So for me, it's just, I will keep growing this podcast. I'll keep getting amazing guests out there for you guys. All you guys need to do is just keep helping me share it, keep helping me grow it. And I think we're still ranking. What was that country I said the other day? Like,
Bosnia, was it?
But no, it begins with Bhutan or something.
Oh,
Bhutan. We're still ranking there. We're still ranking on the podcast charts in Bhutan. So people of Bhutan, again, much love. Again, if you want to get me on a tour there, I'd much appreciate it. Slide into the DMs, and me and Mikey on tour, we'll go and do some episodes there. So yeah, like I said, thank you very much. You guys are absolutely awesome. And like I said, this show's only going to get bigger, only going to get better, and we've got loads of stuff in the pipelines for 2022. So my guest today in person is Vikkis Mills. How are we?
Hi, yeah, good, thanks.
Yeah. So this is your first podcast here. So you actually the guest. I say the guest. You were there, the person behind the scenes on one of the episodes I did recently. And again, you had some really good points on the podcast. And I said, Vicky really helped me do a bit of research into this guest. And Vicky's one of my clients. So Vicky's been with me for 45 weeks now. 45 weeks, and like I said, she's
trauma, yeah.
That's trauma. So you guys get to pick and choose when you listen to me. Vicky has to listen to me all the time, and again, probably sick to death for my voice. And now you've got these headphones on, you can literally hear it. It's like constant.
It's quite intense in my ears, to be honest.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's quite domineering your voice, isn't it?
Damn, Mikey. So we can't do the sleep thing I wanted to do. Daniel James sleep meditation guide. So like I said, you come on the episode today. Again, it's actually your idea. And again, I think it was one of the things where you said it, and then instantly you were like, "What the fuck did I say that?" Because obviously we're working together for 45 weeks, and again, I'm going to get Mikey to ping some of the videos up throughout this episode, some ones that you've recorded, some of your cooler motivational ones.
Oh, great! Yeah, everyone can see my TikToks.
Yeah. What was your TikTok?
I don't know. I actually have no idea. I just use it to make the videos.
You post loads of cool stuff on there, like, with your journey. So to date, so now, it's the 15th of December recording this, you've lost £115 working with me. So like I said, it was your idea, 100th episode, get a client on that's lost over £100, and I think it's absolutely awesome. So like I said, we've been chatting loads off air, and again, meeting Mikey. So how are you feeling being on the podcast?
Yeah, it's very weird. It's very surreal. Like all these lights and people.
Was it Dan on the last podcast? Dan's not come out yet, but he said he thought the room was bigger.
Oh, no.
I know you've been in. I know you've been in before. But when you first came here, did you think the room was bigger?
Yeah, and I also stalked the website because I like to visualise things before I go to places to see the rooms. So I thought your office was the room that's downstairs that you don't use.
Yep.
So then when I came, I was completely thrown out because it wasn't what I envisioned anyway.
I do that, the visualization stuff. So that office downstairs is for the coaches and it's their consultation room. So it's still down there. It's still in use. It's got a massive Muriel. What's the thing? Muriel on the wall. Muriel on the wall of the Promenade project. I've shown you that in that room.
No.
I'll show you that. It's pretty cool. Still does. So the coaches use it for consultations. Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. I told you, like you've generally thrown me off with all these cool things that you brought me. By the way, it has. Vicky was like, "Why aren't you crying?" I was like, "Because I don't want to cry before a podcast episode." I'm very emotional and I do cry very easily. So I'm not crying before a podcast episode.
I mean, I did put it all together, but it really was a collective thing of your clients and Katie's been like a massive help getting stuff sorted and things. So it wasn't just me. I'm just the face of the project.
The project. This project is a good word. No, Jamie, I really do appreciate it. And like I said, it's one of the things where you sharing your story today. Like I said, I know it's going to be, because just how you are as a person, how you articulate things is absolutely awesome. And again, me and you've had some great conversations, especially recently, about where you're at now and talking about bones and stuff like that. There's been so many conversations like, fuck, like, I mean to get you on a podcast so people can actually have this. Because remember one of the first things we spoke about when you started with me was that you didn't have anyone like you to use for like inspiration and motivation because you didn't have anyone that had actually done it. Remember that? Yeah,
and I do now. I have like I use my Instagram just to follow like fitnessy people. I don't really follow anyone else. But the people on there that I follow, I've realised that they've got to how they are because they've had like weight loss surgery.
Fuck off.
So yeah, I only realised this the other week. There's one in particular that I found on TikTok. And she was like £300 and now she's like a bodybuilder and on stage and I follow her, but she had a gastric bypass and I was like, oh, so it's not the same.
Does that make you feel even better though? That you haven't had that?
Yeah, it does in some ways and then not others. So some ways I think, well, like I'm doing this the hard graft way, but then equally for her to produce that body, she'd still have to like be mentally strong enough at the gym and work out, like and have discipline. But yeah, then I also think, well, there's no one like me then, is there? I haven't found someone like me. So then I'm still on the back foot that, is this even achievable?
Well, it is achievable because you're doing it. You're doing it, and what you're doing is you're giving inspiration to other people that are in your position at the start. So again, you started at £400.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Cheers, everyone. You knew it was the first question on it, so you knew. So anything I'm talking about, you know it was on there. But again, start at £400. There's people listening to this at £400, and then to hear that you've lost £115, some people don't even think it's achievable to have lost 50. So like you are literally being the pioneer in doing that then. And to be fair, knowing you as a person, I'm glad that it's you that's doing it because you're quite a fucking determined person. And I think one of the best things I could say to you is, well, you're not going to lose anymore. Because then you'd be like, fuck you. Not fuck you. I'm not going to lose any more. Fuck you. I'm going to lose another 115. Like, that's your mentality, like how you are as a person. So actually, I think for anyone to have it, like be going for it and be the pioneer, I'm glad that it's you.
Yeah, that's nice. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Councillor told me to say thanks. Working on it.
So again, we'll dive into that stuff as well because I said you are Southern counselling like through this now. So the biggest thing that people are going to take away from this is that it hasn't been easy. And again, this is also why I want you to be on this episode because you are real and you are raw and you will tell the audience how it is. You are not the kind of person that's going to paint this amazing picture of, yeah, well, I signed up with Dan and Dan was amazing and every single week it's been amazing and yeah, here I am.
I think on the third word it went wrong when you said you were amazing. So. No, it definitely has been really hard. And I think that, like, everyone goes through things in life and through doing this with you, you unpick the bits that maybe you weren't quite aware of. So, like, having the weight loss, I always knew was achievable for me because I've lost weight previously. So, it's never been that I couldn't lose weight. What I haven't been able to do is sustain weight loss. So, at the minute, we're, like, at £115 and we're fluctuating a bit. But probably for like the last 3 months, I've been like up and down. So this is the first time ever in my life I've managed to sustain a weight, which I think is now probably more important to me than I thought it would be at the start.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think is different this time then? So let's talk about that. What is the difference this time to what you've done in the past?
That I unpicked all the bits that were making me rely on food. Mm-hmm. So, and even now if I go somewhere, I'll choose the healthier option just because I look at things and think, I don't want them calories in my body, which I never would have had that before. I'd just be like, oh, let's go scan a pizza. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what's changed. And what you allowed, like for me, and I know for other people, you allow networking with people that can help you unpick those bits and give you a different perspective on things. And I think that's what changed. I shifted my perspective.
Mm-hmm. So what can you give an example then, like what you think, like what have I given you access to has changed your perspective? Like what have you got something off the top of your head that you can think of?
I think all your guests in general, so obviously Paul Cope, Andy Cope's like Perception of Happiness, and his books like are so easy to read, and to be fair, Paul Cope's book's very conversational, but when you actually like read and take things in, it begins to shift your mind. So for like me, I was like 400-pound Vicky was very, very guarded, very closed off. Even at my job that I worked in, like everyone knew not to talk to me for the first like hour, and I was just in a really, really bad like headspace. I think that things had spiraled in the summer before I left that place, and I got told that I had polycystic ovaries, and then my head was like, oh, I can't have kids then, and what sort of woman will I be if I can't even bear a child? And then all these like thoughts go through your head, and then in that summer I had gone and asked for help, and I know one of your things is that you say to people to like ask the right people, but I had gone and tried to get help from where I was at, and they basically said that 6 sessions is all they could offer a therapy, and that I was probably a bit too like fucked for 6 sessions given all the bits that happened in my life. So then that was just like a nail in the coffin, and then I was like, well, I've got no hope then, that's it, there's no hope for me. Like, this is how my life's going to be. And then not long after that, I tried to crash my car, and went a bit off the rails. And then in the summer...
So crash a car, like... So kill yourself kind of crash a car?
Yeah,
or,
yeah.
I did not know that. You've never told me that.
Oh, there you go.
You've not told me that?
Yeah, got in a right old state. And then I was doing domiciliary care at the time, so I went round to my friend's house in between my calls, and her and her husband sort of like dropped like a little like nugget of about hypnotherapy, and that he'd had it to help his anxiety and things. And it was probably a few months after that I finally took the plunge to go to hypnotherapy. Mainly because I'd started uni, and they were talking about this paradigm thing that was like the bit before you have a mental breakdown, and like you hear voices and things, and I was like, oh my god, I'm actually having a mental breakdown. It was so surreal. Like even in my head, I could hear. It literally felt like you were 2 people, and you could hear voices, and it's like it just consumes you. Like your whole body just gets consumed by whatever this thing is in your head.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned this a few times, because, by the way, I hope my audience can see the reason I wanted Vicky to talk about this, because again, how you articulate things straight away is amazing. Like, I know you've not done a podcast before, and I know me and you have some deep conversations, but you did fucking awesome. Like, genuinely, like how you're just explaining your story is brilliant. But you've mentioned it a few times, and again, I spoke to you about this before we started, so you kind of know this question's coming. But again, so you said you went to counselling beforehand, and essentially you said you were too fucked because of what's happened. And you mentioned before about your past, about how you used food and why you used food. So can you sort of take my audience back to 400-pound Vicky, and before you became 400 pounds, and kind of how that kind of came about, and what basically essentially caused you to use food how you did?
Yeah, so at the school where I was working at that time, the hypnotherapy like led to me unpicking bits, and then in the hypnotherapy I ended up having a repressed memory. And I mean, that's controversial anyway in people's beliefs around hypnotherapy and whether it's real or not, but I can only go off my personal experience, and that whole premise of the body keeps score was so apparent to me, because how my body reacted before my mind did, it was bizarre. And then from that, there was like a sexual abuse, like a sexual assault that happened when I was probably about 3. And then my whole life, really, on reflection, has been very chaotic, like loads of things going on. And there was another incident of like a sexual assault when I was 10. I lived in a house with a lot of people, a lot of male testosterone and ego, and there was only me and mum, sort of females, and my mum's quite like dominant and quite assertive, and she won't put up with stuff on one hand, but also she likes a peaceful life, so sometimes things would just slide, because I think, to be fair, she was probably so full of all the bits she was having to manage that working in a job with where she was and then coming home to a chaotic house was probably a struggle for her as well. But in our house, there was me, my two brothers, older brothers, my stepdad, and then his son for a while. And then his son went to prison. And then when he came out of prison, he was on drugs. I think he'd started on Subutex or something when he was in prison. And then he said he went to a party and had heroin. And then from that, he just got addicted. And then sort of like the whole build-up of his life became consumed our life. So, you know, they say that you can like be a heroin addict and not even touch the stuff because your whole life is like living like them. And like when, you know, he used to wake through the night and be asleep in the day. And then when it's really triggered. So, you know, when he had heroin, because he'd always eat Fun Gums and these dairy milk yogurts, that was it. But he had such a reputation and he was such a hard man, well known in Lincoln. And he had seizures, so he wanted to be a boxer. He tried to go pro, but because of his seizures, he wasn't allowed. And then I think through taking the drugs, he had a seizure in front of all his cronies. And then that sort of led him, everyone then knew his weakness. So that was like a big like hit for him. And then from that, he just spiraled, and then he was like doing things that he shouldn't be doing, getting involved in things he shouldn't be. And he ultimately committed suicide and hung himself when I was 16. And then...
You were quite close to him as well, weren't you?
Yeah, we were... It's really weird to think. So this is the whole thing about grief, is when he died, there was such a sense of relief. And I know that sounds horrible, but when you literally live in that life and you live consumed by the pain of, you know, my mum was terrified on the street once because he had like rattled her and like threw milk up the wall and things. Like when you live that life, it's a relief that they're not there. But then when you get past that, I remember sitting at a bus stop waiting for the bus for school, and a funeral car went past like 6 months later, and I just cried, because then it hit me that actually I did love him and he was my stepbrother and he'd be a big part of my life. But it took a long time to get past the hatred for what he'd done to us all, to be able to feel that.
Yeah, because I know that was a big thing. It's I know that some of the episodes I've done on grief with the podcast, like you've said, have been quite helpful and useful. Because I've said this before, like I've not gone through grief, so me and you have had that conversation, haven't we? And how I've not gone through it, and then you give me a different perspective on some of the episodes I've done.
I think sometimes grief. So you probably have gone through grief. You just haven't. No one's died. Mm-hmm. That's the difference, isn't it? So grief like can happen to anyone. Even so, through my life, that after Scott died, and then death's been really apparent. That, you know, grandparents die, and my stepdad got cancer, and he passed away. So it's all been really hard. But then equally, I would say that there's probably been 4 friendships where I've been so invested that I've almost had to grieve the loss of a friendship. And I think that's a similar principle. Just because someone hasn't died doesn't mean you can't feel grief.
Agreed. But I have nothing to base it off, if that makes sense. So for me, although it is grief, you've had something of like, oh, this feels like grief. Do you mean from like,
yeah.
Does that make sense? I've not had that. That's why I said, me and you've had some good conversations. Because me and you go on good walks. So we have some good walks, we have some deep chats. So that's why, again, I knew that you'd be able to know this podcast because, like I said, and again, by the way, absolutely smashing again. Like, and thank you for sharing that about your brother. I didn't know how bad it got for you when it came to you wanting to crash your car. So how then did you use food? Because we spoke about this before, didn't we? I think it was on one of the check-ins where I think it was a bit of a light bulb moment for you, if I remember correctly, where you sort of came to the realisation of how you sort of used it as a protective barrier for yourself. Can you remember when we spoke about that?
So, but I don't necessarily think it's the use of food. It's the need to be bigger to be safe. Mm-hmm. So food obviously aids the fact that you put on weight and then you're substantially bigger than everyone else. But for me, it's not really about the food. I don't ever get that like dopamine hit off eating food. I'm quite wishy-washy with sometimes I ate it, sometimes I didn't. It's more that I had to be bigger to feel like I was safe. So then if I was bigger, no one looks at me, no one finds you attractive, no one wants to talk to you, you know, you literally can just slide into the background and be ignored. And and that's easier. That is so much easier than being like this, because you have to, when you're bigger and living in my house and the one-upmanship, I had a script. So I knew full well that if someone turned around and was like, oh, you're fat so-and-so, bam, I could like flick a line off really quickly. Like I knew how to manage that because I grew up in that. So then now it's not necessarily about my relationship with food, it's about my relationship with myself, that I have to relearn a new script about how to manage the situations that I've never been in before.
So how have you found that then? Because that's been the biggest thing with the journey that you've been on. I think if we could like basically take the check-ins we've done each week, I think that if we took the one we spoke about the most, it would be this identity shift. And this is what I talk about with the stuff that I basically work with, my sort of essential principles is you've got to change from the old identity to the new identity. We speak about this all the time, don't we? There's that it's hard with the transition. So speaking from your experience now, because you're still going through it, like again, being open and honest about it, like you're still struggling with that. How have you found that? Because again, you've gone from this, I need to be big to be safe. How have you then been able to let your guard down with that?
So between then and now, I think you build scaffolding. So when I face situations that maybe I am unfamiliar with or I feel out of my depth with, it's almost like trial and error. So you react, like you automatically react. It's just a natural processing. And then after I've reacted, I then reflect on whether that was the best reaction or not. And then if I feel like that was good and I'm safe and I'm okay, then I can put a scaffolding in place. So the next time I am in that situation, I don't drop back down to the bottom, I drop back to the scaffolding. And then you just build a new empire.
I love that. Yeah. I don't know why you look shocked when you say that. Like, that's really good. You shocked it.
And I think the thing is, like naturally trauma just seems to like stump growth. Like trauma stumps self-development, doesn't it? Because essentially for you to develop and grow, you have to place some emphasis on your worth, and trauma stumps your worth. So you have to deal with the trauma to improve your self-worth, to then build a better life.
This is why I love you.
Yeah.
This is what that again. You're absolutely just reeling off absolute gold here. So how have you then built that self-worth? Is there things that you can think off the top of your head that I've given you, that I've said to you, or other people have said to you? Because I know you've got the good thing about you is you've got an amazing support network around you. Like you've got some real like close people that are close to you, so you do have a real good support network. So that's something that I will say about you. That some people may not have, is that you do have an amazing support network around you. In some instances, in others you don't. But
I'm really fortunate. I always have though. Even when I was in the absolute worst state before I crashed my car, there was a girl in my Mardy state every morning who used to walk in and go "Good morning" just to make me like smile. And then there was another guy who used to walk in and do dad dancing because it made me laugh. So there was people who knew, like good people around me, and even now I have like one friend who probably for like the last 4 years has messaged me every day, and then even on days when I didn't want to talk to her, she'd send me like a quote to like boost me up, and it's like them bits. Like I've never thought that I was on my own, and I've been really fortunate to that. But then equally when you're in it, sometimes you can't function to talk to anyone, and that's probably the most difficult part. Like you just can't. But I know with like stuff that you said, one of my favourite things that you said. Oh, you're looking like Dread now.
No, literally. Having you on, Vicky, is like a double-edged sword, because I was just like, she's going to be awesome, she's going to provide some amazing things to the audience, but she's also can say a lot of fucking shit about me that I've said, and I'm just like, she can make me really uncomfortable, she can like put me on the spot.
Well, I'll take one for your clients. You tell everyone not to eat like a twat, so there you go, clients, so I've said it now.
There you go. But again, is that not a good motto? Don't eat like a twat.
Yeah, it does seem to really resonate with people, that when they're about to scoff a cake, they go, no, don't eat like a twat.
Just for the record, I do actually teach people how not to eat like a twat. I don't just throw out words. Don't like a twat.
He's like, just eat salad, eat vegetables, don't eat anything good.
Yeah, that's me. Like, if you think of things, you've got to like fuck yourself, like repenting of your sins. No, again, we're going to talk about that as well. We'll talk about the nutrition stuff. But so what were we going to say? What's one thing that I said?
It's that quote that you said to me like loads of times about our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond recognition, and it is our light and not our darkness that scares us. And I think that for me, like when you've lived in darkness so long, like of course that isn't scary. That's comfortable. We all know what that feels like. So that really like resonated with me, because my darkness isn't scary. I don't fear death. You know, you see that when we go on a walk and I walk on the curb to see if I can just fall in front of a car all the time.
Which she does, and then one day she did fall in front of a car, then it shit her up, and then she moved to the other side.
So I don't fear death, and I think that it worries me more what life could be like than what life is like. And I think that's probably what stops people most of the time, is the fear that they could be more, or they could be more than what they think their life is.
I think I heard that quote first on Coach Carter, which is a basketball movie with Samuel Jackson as the coach, and I heard it on there. Then Nelson Mandela said it, but I think Nelson Mandela took it from someone else. I can't remember who it was, but I literally have that on a plaque thing on my bedroom.
So I have it on my bedroom wall.
Yeah.
And then obviously you said that quote the other week about I am what I will to be.
It's on there, yeah.
So
I am what I will to be, yeah.
I have that on my bathroom mirror now. So when I brush my teeth in the morning, I remind myself that I have the choice to choose what I want to be.
And that's also, I think, one of the big things with you that we've had to work on is making you believe that you have a choice.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that you get so consumed in like the narrative of your life that's been put there by everyone else that you just can't see the wood for the trees sometimes. And I think that that's probably what most people get stuck with, is that they think that this is it, like this is their life and that's how it has to be. And, you know, to be fair, I am living proof that it is absolutely not. I never thought, like, 2 years ago that I'd be finishing a degree or, like, having any sort of worth whatsoever, but here I am.
Not just a degree, again, like, but you're having real deep conversations with the professors. Like, you're, like, potentially doing a PhD as well, potentially. Like, your life is completely flipped.
Yeah, it has. It's a bit weird, though. I find that really hard to manage.
You do, and you still to this day, doesn't it? Like, you still, me and you sometimes, because me and you basically chat every single day.
Yeah.
Listen, you fucking love it. But with it, I think that's one of the biggest things you struggle with, is this new version of you. And this is what I sort of say to people at the very, very start. It's like, you've got that, find that best version of you. Like, again, on the podcast, like, the intro is becoming the best version of yourself. And that's basically what you're doing every single day. Like, you're now moving to this best version of you. So physically you're in a different place, mentally you're in a different place. Like, how have you made that shift? Like, how have you changed? I think I asked this earlier on, but I think we went on for a tangent. Like, how have you actually made this identity shift? Because, again, try and put yourself back to, like, when we started this. Like, is there some moments, light bulb moments, whether it's on a 12-week educational video series, whether it's been on a check-in, on a Friday Live, our chats, has there been something that's sort of been a bit of a light bulb moment to you to be like, I really need to fucking make a shift with this?
In all honesty, I don't think there is, because I think that it's such a gradual process. Like, you can't just shift 27 years of a mentality in one instance. Like,
I'm so fucking glad you said that. I'm so fucking glad you said that, because I was like, that was what basically what I wanted you to say.
Oh, there you go. You're welcome.
Because what people think is that they'll sign up with me, or they'll sign up with the coach, and the coach is going to give them one thing. Or they're going to hear one thing, or they're going to read one thing, and then suddenly they're going to do it. And that's not the case.
No,
So,
it's like being drip fed, isn't it?
Yes.
That you have to, like, have someone in your ear all the time, just like drip feeding you. And to be fair, that's what my friends did when I was in my worst state. It's just that person messaging me every morning was just drip feeding me that there was still hope, that there was still a light, and that someone still cared. And I think it's the same principle with this, that I can sit here now, £100 lighter, but
115.
£115 lighter. And I think that actually, to be fair, that's like a stone different. Maybe I should say that, 115.
Yeah. You're like 100, right? No, it's more than 100.
Yeah.
It's only 15.
Not negating my achievements. Yeah, £115 lighter. And I could say that I'm like a new person and everything's wonderful, but that wouldn't be true. And I'm not in anywhere near the headspace I used to be. I still have days where I struggle to get out of bed and motivate myself and go to the gym, and I still massively suffer with thinking that I don't belong. So like, even this is so far out my comfort zone, and the thought that I would be sat on a podcast or anyone would want to hear what I had to say is crazy. That's just not how things are. But I've learnt now methods to help me manage the thoughts in my head. So whereas before I'd probably go and smash loads of wine, get really drunk, or I'd like eat a takeaway, which to be fair were pretty much my only methods, generally alcohol more than food. Now I'd like go and read a book. I literally went out last weekend, bless them, and I think my friends find it quite hard to manage my transition as well, because I literally was the girl. The girl said to me, "Oh, do you know, last time we were out, the taxi was going to come and you said you were going to smash a bottle of wine in 5 minutes before we went out." And I did. I literally downed the bottle of wine in 5 minutes and then went out on the lash. And that's who everyone knows me as. Like, I'm the party, the loud, the boisterous one. And I've never even been the intelligent one. So even the shift from university and then gaining all this knowledge, I think other people are a bit like, oh, like, bloody hell, well, she just said that. And even I'm a bit like, oh, where did that come from? And that's been like harder. But the coping mechanisms I've developed are like reading. I'd literally rather go home and read a book than be sat in town with people that annoy me. Like, it's just the general public literally annoy me sometimes. And I'd rather be in my own space and be comfortable there. Like, I don't need other people near me to validate my existence. Like, I'm enough to be on my own in my room and read a book. Like, that satisfies me. And my dog, like, she's a big help.
Which we've all met. All the clients met on the walks.
Yeah, my little Pixie.
Pixie, yeah. Is there any other strategies you've got then that you've said there? There's other things that help you take control of your thoughts and help you shift. So you say like reading a book helps, which again, so there's 2 non-negotiables all my clients have to do when they sign up with me: read a book and gratitude journal.
Yeah, so to be fair, I didn't do either.
I know. I know.
So for a long time, I didn't do either.
Were you very resistant at the start? To the process in general.
I was resistant to you.
Why?
Because you're a bloke and they just leave or terrify me, really.
Mm-hmm.
That's like my life narrative is that they either die or they hurt me. So why would you be any different? So
we have had some not aggressive conversations, but deep. You've been not
aggressive.
We've had some deep conversations, haven't we? Like, aggressive is the wrong word. I'm trying to think, because you know the conversation we've had about not necessarily assertive. When we've had conversations about you being convinced that I was going to leave, and then I've had to basically be like, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, which I find really annoying, because in my head, it's so frustrating that when you know how everyone else behaves and you have this whole, like, the script, and you know if you do this and you behave like that, then that person is going to react this way, and you've adopted that your whole life, that when you're behaving like that and someone isn't giving you the reaction you're supposed to get, it causes such a confusion in your head, like, because you should be gone now. Like, the amount of times I've deleted you, been horrible, been really rude, you should just be like, no, I'm not putting up with this. And then my head's like, but why? But why this isn't worth it?
So, why? So then why have you then now? Because there was, I can't remember when it was, but there's been a massive shift when you realised that wasn't going anywhere. Can you remember? Can you remember in your head why that happened?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to this, but because I think we had a conversation about how there was a shift, but I don't know why there was a shift. So if you want to share that, because wasn't it almost weekly we had the conversation of you.
Weekly, daily. At least I had a meltdown at least like 4 times a week. I think when you did your podcast about your story, that's what changed my perspective. So, like, you were very guarded when I first started. Mm-hmm. You had the ability to tell people just enough to satisfy their needs, but not enough to let anyone in. And that's how you were. But when you did that podcast with your story, you made yourself vulnerable, and that was more of a genuine, realistic person than anything I've probably ever encountered. And how, like, brave and courageous you have to be to do that. Now I've just said that in my head, I'm like, well, actually, Vicky, you're doing that. Literally,
yes.
Got a voice in my head, just
yes.
like, oh. Yeah, and how brave you have to be. That's what changed my perspective of you, because you're so far. When you look at them, when people like look at you, no, like, don't take offence from this. It's like they are going to look and think a typical PT, fancies himself, egotistical, because like you look after yourself, because you're like physically okay. That's my compliment.
I was going to say that is a big compliment for you. Yeah, okay. It's a nice thing you've said to me.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I think that's probably my perception. So when I started this, I just thought that you're just going to give me a plan and then be done. What I didn't anticipate is how much you get inside people's heads. But I feel like definitely on this journey that I've got inside yours just as much as you've got inside mine.
In what way?
You're way more receptive and open now to people, but because you've allowed that, then I've almost felt like I have. So never in my life, this is going to sound really corny now, never in my life have I followed people on Instagram or really cared about what the latest trend was or anything like that. I'm just not bothered, never been interested. But when I started this, and then when I got to know you and sort of did my psychoanalysis daily, I realised that I finally had someone that inspired me, and I've never had anyone in my life that I've ever thought, oh my God, like, I want to be like that. And it's not that I want to be a personal trainer or have this podcast or any of these things that you do. It's that I just want to be able to be so comfortable with myself that it really doesn't matter what anyone else thinks, because I've got me, and ultimately that's all we have. And that's what...
Why the fuck you can make me cry? Jesus. Yeah, Mikey's got good. Mikey's got goosebumps. So it's interesting you said this, because, and again, this is why I enjoy talking to you. And again, because you think you've been a dick, and I've said this to you multiple times, you're never a dick.
I am.
Is when we first started, you called me out on my Facebook profile picture. Remember?
Oh, that was a different client, but I joined in with that.
Did you? Yeah, I think it was really you that kind of. I think you said something. Like I
agree. It definitely was me.
I think they kind of said something. Kind of, they're a bit like, oh, I think you should, and you were like, no, you definitely should. Like you were very assertive. That's how you are. And I was like, oh, okay. And then you were when you were psychoanalyzing me, because you did used to do that all the time, and you're the only person that's done that. Because again, I always say to people to challenge me, because I want you to challenge me, because I know my stuff. And I know my intentions are genuine and pure. So my thing is, when I'm giving you stuff, if you didn't agree, if you wanted to test me on it, test me. And then the more you were doing that, I was like, okay. And then it then helped me learn more about myself and how I do what I'm doing, if that makes sense. And it was not a conscious thing to let my guard down on that podcast with Mikey. It just happened to be how the universe worked. That guy cancelled, and I was in a vulnerable state. And then it allowed. And then when you made a comment about it, because I've always tried to be vulnerable. Not in a vulnerable where it was me, but I've always tried to share my story to help people. I just didn't realise I'd been as guarded as I was until you called me out on it, and then you were like, this podcast episode, I was like, oh, okay, because I didn't realise, because I thought, and again, this is something really interesting, I had a team meeting about this, because again, this week, again, I've had someone say something very similar to me about, you're acting this way, and I was just like, oh fuck, I didn't realise I was doing that, because I'm sometimes just so doing what I'm doing, thinking I'm doing something, but I'm not really doing it. So if there's me thinking I was being really truly authentic and letting people in, but then you used to keep calling me out on it, I was a bit like, okay. So now I'm just like, this is me. Like, and you've sort of mentioned that the more I do these podcasts, the more I'm doing it, but I'm not doing it consciously now. Because then when someone makes me aware of something, and I take it on board, it just sort of happens. So again, if anyone's noticed the podcast has got better, you can thank Vicky, because again, she's the motherfucker behind the scenes, like, just fucking
analysing every little detail.
Analysing it. But again, this is one of the things where, yeah, I think it helps you, because you had questions in your head, and I think you had doubts in your head about me and all that sort of stuff, and by you then asking the questions and getting the answers, you could then sit with that and be a bit like, okay.
Yeah, and it definitely is part of life. You know, when you create new relationships, you'll have to test boundaries, because you have to know where the boundaries are within that relationship. And
it's testing boundaries, Vicky.
The thing was, I was just thinking about your profile picture on Facebook, and for me at the time, when we're speaking about an identity shift, if you've got a picture of your modelling days and how you were as a fuckboy, do not sit there and tell me that I need to chuck my old clothes out if you're going to hang on to a photo that isn't you now.
There you go. And that's exactly what you said to me.
And it's,
No, but listen, that is exactly what you said to me.
Yeah.
That is exactly the words that you said to me. And I was like, you fucking right?
Yeah.
But again, no one has said that to me.
I'm always right.
Nice, she's a dickhead. No, but genuinely, no one has said that to me. And this is the thing with me, like, I don't ever claim to be perfect. I don't ever claim to be superior. I'm not. I'm just a fucking bloke. I'm just a guy that's gone through some shit and trying to help other people. And I've got the information now to help people do that. So again, just because you're a client of mine doesn't somehow mean that you're stupid and I'm fucking inferior. Like, that's never the case. So,
no, and I think that's probably what's always been apparent, is that you've always respected, even when we've disagreed on things, you've always respected what I had to say, And I think that's sometimes enough for me when you feel like you've never been heard and you've never been listened to, that for someone to actually listen. And then when you act on the things I say, my head is literally like, what the hell's going on?
What did I say? 'Cause I said something on a podcast.
Which
I think it was something to do with Mikey's podcast, and you said something that you didn't like the episode, and then I defended Mikey.
That was Mikey's drug thing.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and
Yeah.
you weren't happy about it, and then I defended it and defended my stance because I believed in it. But you said something, I can't remember what it was. You made a very valid point about what you were saying, and then a few episodes later, I didn't realise I'd done it, but I said something, and then you were like, "Oh my god, you listened to me." Can you remember what that was? I can't.
Yeah.
What was
So
it?
Mikey had said about the psychedelics, and that for me, listening as a listener, that the way it came across sometimes is that you could take drugs and reach this state of like euphoria, which then solves your depression, which obviously isn't at all what you and Mikey were trying to get at, but as like a...
That was your preloaded with your experience with drugs.
Yeah.
Which me and you discussed. And
so I would never want people to think that drugs is going to solve the problem, because my experience with drugs, it just causes heartache and pain.
Yeah, and then what I was basically saying, my thing with that is Mikey's truth.
Yeah.
And you didn't know Mikey at the time. And I was just like, I know Mikey, and I think I said to you then, trust me on this. I think I said something along those lines.
Yeah, you did, yeah. But you're asking someone who
know.
doesn't trust men to then trust you. That's like an impossible task.
Because I think out of all the conversations we've had, that's one that stuck with me. With the whole, I'm getting goosebumps about this. I can remember like having this conversation with you because, again, the conversation was like, I like Mikey, I trust Mikey, and I didn't know you that long then, did I? When you started, and then you then said that, and I was just like, I've got a good feeling about Mikey, so I'm going to stick by him here. But then I had to stand strong. And I had to stand strong with that because, again, because of how you are, it'd be very easy for me to have bowed down to you then, but I didn't. I was like, no. It would have been because of how you were being, and because you have some very valid points. You have some very, very valid points, but I was like, no, I am so confident in this and my gut feeling with this. I've stand firm on what I've said. But as I said, just because I didn't agree with what you were saying, I was listening to what you were saying.
Yeah, because then in like 2 podcasts after that, you had someone else who was talking about drug use, and then you said, absolutely, we do not condone the use of drugs. Like Prime Life Project doesn't, do your own research. And that's all like I needed. I just needed someone to reinforce that you weren't saying, go take drugs and solve your depression. You were saying that this is their story and this is how they did it, but there are other ways. And that was enough. So like to be heard is like a bizarre thing for me.
All right. Did I not tell you that we weren't going to go through these questions? so Vicky, obviously, is the first time she's done this. I was like, oh, so I'll give you these list of questions so I kind of know what we talk about. But I knew we wouldn't go. And like now you're actually on this. Can you see how these episodes never go down? How they're meant to go down? I have these lists so that the guest feels like they're kind of in control. It's like we're just going to go down rabbit holes today, and we have. And again, I love your transparency and honesty, and I knew that I'd get this from you because of how we always are. You at more than anybody, I know really can't be anything other than yourself. Also, Mike's on that level as well, but you can't. So I knew that you coming on, you would just be you. So I knew there's no stressful drama. I know you were worried, but I wasn't. I was like, you're going to freaking smash this. So I just wanted to, because there's some key points here that I want to make sure do sort of get into with this. But when you originally started working with me, what did you actually expect? Like, what was your reason for actually starting with me? Because as you sort of said, you didn't really trust guys. So when you signed up with me, what were you actually expecting? And then what did you actually get? I know we've kind of hit on this on a few points, but I kind of want it a bit more of a succinct thing.
Yeah, it's a bit bizarre, really. I mean, now I look back, like the way the world works, it's very, very strange.
The universe works in mysterious ways.
It really does, yeah. So I actually had no intention of getting fit or anything. I was quite happy just downing a couple of bottles of wines a night and drinking myself to oblivion, really. But I'd just come off the back end of counselling. Well, I was just at the later stages, only having a few more sessions left. And then from that, I went on Facebook and my friend on a story had your 5-day kickstart challenge.
Which is starting again in January. You'll find out more information about that coming up. Shameless plug. But it's free, so it's a completely free challenge. So listens to this, keep your eyes peeled in coming up towards January. I'll be talking more about it. It's a free 5-day kickstart thing where essentially I'll give you a kickstart into 2022, and it's again a lot of the stuff that were you actually on that?
Yeah, I did that. Yeah.
So
I went back and looked at my answers as well.
Yeah, so it was good, wasn't it?
Yeah. So for me, I didn't even think I'd do it. even when she sent me the link and said, oh, this is it, and I joined, and then you were saying that you had to do a task by the end of the day, otherwise you get kicked out of the group. I actually in my head was thinking, prick, tell me what to do. I'm not doing that. Like that's literally my mentality. And I don't even know why I did stick to it. So
I don't know. Can you remember what I looked like when I was doing that? It was during lockdown, wasn't it? It's had that long, crazy hair.
Yeah, it wasn't a good look.
Looked homeless. I love that now. Like, how did I get any clients during that period of time when I looked so homeless? They just trusted this homeless guy to get them results. Anyway.
I think because you were so convinced that you wanted a man bun that everyone was just really waiting for your hair to grow to just make it look a bit better.
And then it didn't really happen. It was just like me. So sorry. So for the challenge, you thought so carry on. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I joined it off the back of that girl's thing, and then after the 5-day challenge, I remember messaging her and sort of trying to get the feelers about like how you were as a person. But when she worked with you, you did your one-to-one. You didn't do this online coaching. So she couldn't really. And then I just like took the plunge, which I think takes a lot of courage. And maybe that's the bit people don't always see, that when you've been able to reach out and actually take the plunge to essentially ask for help, like that takes a lot for someone to do, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I don't take it lightly either. Like, and hopefully it came across that way when we had that consultation.
Well, you're just very pryy. So
go on then, let's talk about it. So I know that you weren't happy with the consultation. So go on.
It's not like I wasn't happy with
it.
My inquisitive mind wants to know why you're asking these questions.
Yeah. So go on, talk about that.
So in my head, like obviously I've done like other weight loss programs before, that I'm just going to go, you're going to give me a food plan, I'm just going to go eat the right food and then I'll lose weight, Bob's your uncle, everyone's happy. But on the consultation call, you started asking me about like my life, and I remember telling you about the people dying, and then you were like, can you tell me more about that? And I remember being like, obviously that blatant like look and stunned silence, and then you were like, oh, you don't have to. So I think that from me was like the question to know why you wanted to pry, like why would you care what I had to say anyway. And I think that's probably the shift. It's really weird for someone like me who goes around life thinking that like no one actually cares and people aren't very nice people, that when you meet someone who asks you something and then you're like, oh, why are you asking me that? Like, so in my head I just think, are you trying to use something against me? Like all the negative spiral that happens, but actually like you do generally just care. And it's a very weird concept that someone actually just cares, like and it's the face value, isn't it, that someone would want to invest their time and effort into helping somebody else. Like.
So now do you see why I asked those questions?
Yeah, I see why. I think after doing the 5-day kickstart and you go through like the mental health and the nutrition and the mindset stuff, I probably knew why you're asking. I just didn't like the fact that you were prying, and that's the difference. That I was so guarded that like not even a pickaxe would get through my walls. So I think. So
how did I get through the walls? Because I would like to say I think I'm safely in those walls now.
Oh, that's very bold, isn't it?
I'd like to think so. I'd like to think I've crossed the level now. Like I said this before. Like I think I've crossed the level with you. Like we're friends. So
yeah.
So
all my friends would agree that you've definitely crossed the barrier.
So how have I done that? Because for me, my goal. Because yeah, I think this is one of the things you also freaked out about. Was you thought there was a challenge for me to just get through that wall, and then once I got through, I was going to be like, okay, cool, I've done it now.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest things where you were like, oh yeah, you're like, you're not coming through, because as soon as you're coming through, you're just going to leave. And I was just like, no, like I've not gone up. And again, I want you to understand this. I've not ever seen you as a challenge of being like, oh, I'm going to break this person and I'm going to get in there. That's never been the case. I've literally just been me. And that's the thing where I think that you were trying to catch me out multiple times. You were, weren't you?
Yeah, that's definitely the premise, isn't it?
Because
then you give me the evidence to reinforce why this can't be the case.
And that's why I always was like, when you're doing it, I was like, yeah, ask me what you want. Like, that's why I would encourage you to do it, because I'm like, I'm just being me. Like, you think I'm doing this for a game plan. I'm like, no, I'm just being me. So I was like, you can ask what you want. You can do this, you can do that. I was like, I'm just being me. So I know that's how I've got through your walls, I think, by just being myself. And I knew that over time the trust would be built. But I'd be very interested to know from your point of view how I've actually done that, in case I'm completely wrong. But how have I actually done that?
So there is an element of being authentic and genuine. And I think that's why I struggled at the start, because I knew you weren't being truly authentic with who you were, because you were being guarded. So then I meet that. So you're going to be guarded, I'm going to be guarded. But I think now it's from consistency. So obviously in my life, everyone's been so unpredictable. Like, it's very erratic behaviour when you live in a drug environment and things fly off. And my brothers and the household was quite loud and domineering, and like I say, men argue, egos, teenagers, it's just loud. And I think that then that's what you provided, was a consistent reaction to everything I was doing. So then for me, that becomes safe because I know you're predictable. So when you do things that aren't predictable, it would throw me, but that didn't happen. Maybe once it probably happened. Because I remember being one occasion that I was like really struggling whether I could build the boundaries of the relationship back up because you hadn't reacted in the way that I was then expecting.
Mm-hmm. Can you remember what that was?
No, I can't. But I remember it's when I went to the beach and had a whole meltdown. And I was like crying and thinking that I just couldn't do this anymore, that I was better off before and that I was safer, that this isn't safe. And I think that ultimately is what it all comes down to, is that, you know, as human beings, we have to feel safe to function. And sometimes when I'm not, like, the food and everything else has to go out the window because I'm just in survival mode. All I have to do is just think how I'm going to function to get to the end of the day. And then if that lasted a few days and then I wasn't sticking to plan, then I'd be like, well, what's the point in this? Because now I'm not sticking to the plan, I'm not wasting my money, and it just spirals. But ultimately, most of the time, you were consistent. And that's what broke my barriers, is the consistency.
And I think you actually meet me in person. Can we have that first walk?
The really awkward walk.
Around the lake?
Yeah.
Yeah? I think that was a big thing for you as well, to see me in person. Because I think, again, because you'd heard me on voice notes, but then to actually see me in person, I think you were then also worried how I'd come across in person.
The thing is, when you build these bonds up with someone, and it's very bizarre, this whole setup, because you really wouldn't expect to not meet someone and then spill out your life story. And I remember saying to you something like, you were saying that, do you not think clients tell me their life story? And I was like, well, no, why would they? And then here I am, 40 odd weeks later. And I think that that's, for me, the walk was more about that you knew so much about me that then if the person I perceived and the person that was being consistent is going to be congruent with the person I meet on the walk. Mm-hmm. And that was then difficult to manage. And then I wasn't in a very good headspace when I went for a walk anyway. So the whole thing was just a bag of anxiety, really.
And how was it?
It was all right. Do you know what I remember most about that walk?
Go on, amaze me. Probably something stupid I did or said.
It was a Daniel and the Lions.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I absolutely loved about that walk.
Yeah.
And then you'd said something, and obviously it annoyed me. And then I started walking like off on the grass, and then you were like, "Just because you're going over there, Vicky, doesn't mean I'm going anywhere." So I created such a physical barrier between me and you, and there was a bench between us, and a guy sat on the phone on the bench. And then when I walked around the bench, I was like, "Well, I wasn't actually. I just didn't want to get in the way of that guy's view." And then you were like, "He's on his phone."
What's that story of Daniel and the Lions? I know it because I told you.
It's just the premise, isn't it, that rather than like Daniel basically looked at himself for the answer, rather than when you're faced in them situations with like the lions and things that scare you and terrify you, that actually you look within yourself and you have the answer. That's the whole premise, and that's what stuck with me.
I'm glad. That's one of my favourite stories.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And again, it's because it's my name as well. It's also pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
So you were happy.
I'm the lion. You're Daniel.
So were you happy with my consistency on that walk, about how I actually was as a person? Because again, I think that for me, again, on talking to you now on this, is one of the biggest things for me, is because I don't ever want people to think that I'm a certain way on this podcast or on social media, or when they hear me talking at schools, but I'm not like that in real life. So
no, it's really weird. Like, you genuinely are, and it's such a bizarre thing. For like the most of the population, I mean, I say this, but I think it's probably true. Most of the population genuinely live in a fearful state and are very wary of other people's intentions and motivations behind things. But like, you genuinely are just a kind, like, generous person. Like it's just bizarre. Like honestly, my head. I know you're like, don't get emotion. My head sometimes just struggles with the concept that someone can be so authentically nice and kind, because that really is such a rarity. And you see them quotes that say like, be the person like you wish you had. Like that sticks with me, and because I feel like you're like the one that inspires me, that I now know how to be the person that other people wish they had.
I love that. Fucking deep shit in that. Fucking actually Mike in the background there.
Nice.
Go on, pull yourself together.
Fucking call me on bullshit again. No, but again, it's really sad, because that's when I go into schools. I basically, my premise of going to schools is being the person that I wish I had. That's what I'm trying to be. I'll be the person I wish I had. And for you to then turn around and say that as well is pretty fucking cool.
It's just the world is so harsh, isn't it? And the more time goes on, the more stressful situations are put in people's way, and the financial uncertainty, job uncertainty, family breakdowns. There's so many things that happen that we're all subjected to, and essentially everyone always thinks that they have it worse than others. But like, if everyone was just a bit kinder and everyone was a bit more compassionate towards each other, wouldn't that help a long way? And I feel like that's what you showed me, is that not everyone in the world is self-absorbed. And
I think you got on well with the team as well. So on the 2 walks that we've been on, I think you kind of got on well with, because you were a bit reluctant at first, weren't you, to be in a sort of group environment with people sometimes, because you couldn't...
No, that was just after I did Ben Nevis, so okay. I felt like everyone was going to be like, oh my god, amazing Ben Nevis, and I'd just be the awkward fart in the corner being like, thanks.
Because you don't take confidence well, and a lot of people in the group, literally again, talk about the people, the person you want to be, a lot of people in the group are like, oh my god, she inspires me, and I'm like, just tell her. So like that time when I got a client, I was talking to a client.
Yeah.
So a client was coming, was sat opposite me on the desk, and they were basically talking about how amazing you were. So I then literally picked my phone out, clicked the voice record button, and said, "Tell yourself." And then she basically said what she was saying to me to you. And I was like, it's because people get inspired by the people. So again, if you're listening to this, like, you never know who's watching. Like, just be that light for someone. Just be the best version of yourself constantly. You don't know who you're actually going to inspire along the way. So it's a big, massive thing. But then you spoke about Ben Nevis. So can you talk to me about some of the things that you've actually experienced since losing this 115 pounds? So I've got a list of, I think I told you before, like there's 4 things in here that that off the top of my head that I've noticed. So I want you to talk about like climbing Ben Nevis. That's a big thing. And then bungee jumping.
Yeah. Feeling
your bones.
Yeah, which you basically poo-pooed the thing and then you reflected on it after.
Yeah, because I was a bit like, I've never spoken to someone in your position, and when you articulated it, I think it's the way that you articulated it to me was almost like a bit of a joke.
How do you manage feeling your bones?
Yeah, and I was just like, what? And I thought you'd been stupid, and then I thought about it, I was like, well, if you've never felt your bones, like, so talk to me about those things, like climbing Ben Nevis, bungee jumping and feeling the bones. Would you be happy sticking on your videos on here?
Well, you've already told everyone you're going to do that.
No, but we had the, can you remember the Ben Nevis one?
Yeah, she could put me crying on the screen if that's what you're insinuating.
Yeah, can I put that one on?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're listening to this on Spotify Apple Podcasts, click on YouTube and watch that, because that's powerful. And again, Vicky didn't believe this, but it's on the background of my...
Yeah, he's a bit cute, isn't he?
I had it on the background of my MacBook because it's something that's so powerful for me. You've actually seen that video?
4 hours and 10 minutes into Ben Nevis. And I'm at the top. Just like, so overwhelmed. I can't believe like how much I've changed, and 6 months ago I would never have even contemplated this. And I can't believe I've done it. A bit emotional. And I think that on the way up, what I get thinking is that it doesn't matter how far I get, that I've done really well to get this far. But I just because I made it to the top. Yeah.
And you didn't believe it was there, so talk to me.
This is part of the bit that you do as well that you might not realise, is that, and my friend told me this once when I was leaving the school and I was starting uni and I didn't have like any confidence whatsoever, and she said, it's all right, Vicky, because I've got enough self-belief for both of us, and then until you catch up. And that sort of sticks with me, and that's what you do as well. That especially after I climbed Ben Nevis and you did that podcast and you were like, and those motherfuckers telling her, like that's amazing. Hey, yeah, because that's so empowering to me that someone actually backs my corner. Because on the days that I don't even back myself, there's someone else who's like being my little cheerleader in the corner in his little like rah-rah skirt. Definitely need to top on.
You weren't meant to tell people I was wearing rah-rah skirts. It's a secret. I think on Saturdays.
And I think that's it really. So the Ben Nevis was very like impromptu. I didn't really think I was going to do it. I'd literally, well, before that, I'd had like a really bad week a few months prior, and I took myself off to the Peak District for a weekend. And then when I was at the Peak District, I got a bit lost in the middle of nowhere, and then was basically using my phone, the little blue dot, so there was no signal, to figure out which direction I was going in to where the car was. And I ended up having to walk up this massive hill. Oh, it was so big, and you identify as a fat girl who can't climb hills, and you look at this monster of a hill and you just think, I'm never getting up there. And then when I got to the top, I was so elated. Like, that buzz of dopamine is more than anything alcohol does or food or anything. Like, you can't feel that. It's just bizarre. And then from that, I think that then my friend who I lived with at the time was going to Scotland, and I just decided that I was going to go and do a bungee jump to see my friend up there. And then when I was there, I was just going to do Ben Nevis. It was just really, really quick. And then everyone was like, "Oh, do you know where you're going?" "Oh, the tourist route," and I'll just see how it goes. I'm assuming there's going to be other tourists, so I won't get lost. And when I got, I think I was like, was it like 50 metres from the top or something? And I sent you a voice note, like, I'm 50 metres from the top. And I don't think I've ever felt so proud of something to get to the top. So on the way up, there was a woman. Ben Nevis is bloody hard from the start. Like, there is no easy part of Ben Nevis. And I think I was about 20 minutes in, literally huffing and puffing. And this woman said, "Oh, don't worry if you don't get to the top, because it's really tricky up there. Like, just turn around and come back round." And in my head, I just thought, oh my God, she's right. Why is a fat girl climbing Ben Nevis? Don't be ridiculous. Like, you can't do this. But obviously there was another niggling part of me being like, no, come on, Vicky, keep going. So I did, just to see how far I could get, really. And then this elderly couple, bless them, I say elderly, they were just a lot older. they weren't geriatric.
They were in their 40s.
Yeah. They were Dan's age.
I'm only 32. How old are you, by the way?
28.
There you go, just people know.
Yeah, I think they were in their 50s or 60s, and they'd basically saw Pixie, because my little Pixie climbed Ben Nevis as well, and she was like, "Oh, come on then, Pixie," and then they walked with me to the top, and they were just amazing, telling me about their life and that they climbed Snowdon, and that kept me occupied, I think, and then stopped the self-doubt. And then I remember literally reaching, you come over like this little brow of a hill, and you see there's like loads of brickwork up there. Don't know why, but there is. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, like, I've made it. That's bizarre. And then I wanted to cry, and then I was like, don't cry, there's people. so I walked off. I walked off like round this corner where no one else was, and just cried. And then obviously I did that like video and sent you a voice note that I was at the top. Like that. It's just amazing. It amazes me now to think that I've even done it.
Your face when you're doing it, again, if you listen to audio, go check it on YouTube, because like your face is when you're
yeah.
No, when you're talking about it. No, when you're talking about it. And when you talk about it, like, you can see how happy you are and how proud of yourself you are still doing it.
Oh, what now?
Yeah.
Oh, well.
I mean, yeah. You completely change when you're like, it's like how proud you are. It's actually incredible.
Yeah, because, there's not that many people, especially like at the time, what was I, about 21 stone? Like, 21 stone climbing the highest mountain in the UK, and then people...
Go on, do it. Yes!
Yeah.
Yes, I've wanted a big fist off you for so long, and you never do it. Yes!
Yeah, because you didn't say big fist before. Yes. You just need to not say big fist. It's not appropriate.
Done it.
Big fist.
Done it.
It's just not okay, is it?
100th episode, get a big fist, and you love it. My day's been made. I'm so happy right now. God. How many times I wanted to do that, and you're like, no.
No, because you go big fist and then do it. So you didn't say the word before you did it.
More victory. Don't take this away from me. So to wrap this up, this is, again, we spoke about this off air. What message would you give people who are £300 plus, that are in the same position as you were in? Like, what would your message be to them? Like, basically go back and talk to essentially you at the start, what would your message be to them?
To not take it lightly, that this is a lifestyle change and it is a journey. It's absolutely worth it. Like, if someone told me the bits that I'd be doing now, then I would never have believed them, but, you know, I have, and it is achievable. And I think it doesn't really matter how big you are, because ultimately it all comes back to yourself, doesn't it? So it doesn't matter if you're £300, £200, you want to lose £10, you want to lose 200. Like, the point is, it's how you view your relationship with yourself that's going to determine that. So, look at you little smiling.
Is that you do listen to what I say?
I think that for me, when you're in a really bad headspace and probably so depressed like I was, and I didn't know I was at the time, you just function, that when the days that are so hard that you literally can't talk to anyone, like, it's okay to be enough to get to bed at night and when your head hits the pillow to tell yourself that you made it, because I think that's the start. When you wake up every morning and you can't function and you don't want to be here and you don't want to go to work, but you make yourself and you get out of bed and you do the things you have to do and you look after the kids and, you know, you get on with life, that then when your head hits that pillow, you tell yourself that you made it through another day. And you take one stair at a time and don't look at the whole staircase.
Just win the day.
Yeah.
Just win the day.
That's my advice.
You are incredible. I know you don't take confidence well. I know I tell you all this all the time, but I normally get a lot of messages from people about this episode because it's been powerful. You've been absolutely amazing. Genuinely absolutely incredible. And I know you're not going to take it very well, so
yeah, thanks.
I'm just going to keep pouring compliments at you. If people want to reach out to you, what's your social media?
I think my Instagram is vmills16, and my Facebook's just Vikkis Mills, but that's literally all I have. I do have TikTok, but I won't tell you what it is. I don't really use social media, but I'm always happy to have conversations and, you know, give people advice and support. I know I'm not a counsellor, but, you know, I've been through enough of my own stuff to know how difficult it is. So,
Genuinely, you've helped a lot of people today, so I just want to say thank you. Like, thank you for all the balloons and the cake and the little Youre. Which again, if anyone's watching YouTube and wondering why Yode's here, it's because I always say to my clients that they are the superstar in their own story. Like, they're the hero in their own story. I'm just the guide. So I'm just Youre. They're Luke Skywalker, and I'm Youre. And again, same thing with you guys. Like, you are the hero in your own story, and it's really important you guys understand that. Like, you are the hero in your own story. Just again, find your guide, whether it's me or someone else. Like, but the help is out there. Again, as Vicky said throughout some point, just back yourself to do it. And again, it's super rewarding. I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing this. I've got so much love for you. I say to you all the time, genuinely so much love. And I know this wasn't an easy thing for you to do. So I just want to say thank you very much.
It's alright, I quite enjoyed it actually.
Yeah. I knew you would. I knew once you started talking about this, she's going to fucking love this. She gets to talk for an hour straight. She'll love it. You actually nailed it.